Welcome to this week's edition of In the Clubhouse with EMD. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my wonderful co-host, Keith Glasser. Keith, how are we doing today?
Great, how are you?
Good. We're getting to that time of year, and this is something that we reiterate a ton with everybody that we talk to, and we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I think it's worth continuing to hammer home is specifically for the 2025s. This goes for the 26s too, but you got to take ownership of your process. And if you think the recruiting process is just going to simply come to you and that guys are going to magically show up to your games or they're going to magically know who you are because of a Twitter post or whatever, you're sorely mistaken. You have to take ownership of your process. You have to think critically about what you're doing. The outreach to coaches needs to be consistent. The collection of video needs to be consistent. If you're leveraging social media, that needs to be consistent. You need to make sure people know where you are, when those games are going to be. You need to make sure that you're targeting the right locations to go and having that preparation involved. And I think we can boil that down to, one particular word, shout out Jocko Willink, but ownership. Like, you got to take ownership of your process and be proactive, be your biggest advocate when it comes to getting your name out there, when it comes to communicating with coaches. And if you're doing that and you're playing well, you got a chance to be really successful in this process and find a good place to play college baseball. So I'll start it off on that, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Sure. I think it's the biggest part of a lot of things that you're going to have to do in life, but obviously of this process is making sure that you're, one, being an active participant in it, and in doing so, you are starting to take ownership of your process. Getting emails out, getting video, getting schedules out, all the things that you touched on, but also understanding that this is a fluid process. And I think one of the things, and we've talked about this quite a bit, but it's that kind of, if we talk about it this much, it's probably important. Understanding that everyone's process is A, different, but B, everyone's process is slowing down, right? With the rule changes from last year and everything, there are a lot of 2025s that may or may not be, or have super limited or haven't talked to, Division I coaches that are going to likely be playing Division I baseball, because they've had a chance to develop over the last couple over the off season and into the spring, and they're going to get seen this summer, and people are going to be like, wow, this guy can play a little bit, and here we go. And for 2026s, it's going to be a little bit, spun up this year, but, if you're not getting recruited by, Division I's and you want to play Division I baseball, doesn't mean you can't. It's just, you need to you need to understand what it is that you need to do better in order to get recruited by those schools. But also with that comes, what is your floor? Right? Is your floor Division III baseball? Because that's a pretty good place to start. Is your floor JUCO or NAIA or Division II, whatever it might be? What is your floor? And then what do I have to do in order to get to where I want to go? But you can't do any of this stuff if you're not taking ownership or being an active participant in what is going on. And I think the other thing that comes with it is being able to have some tough conversations. Right? You're going to have some conversations with your coaches about where they think you fit in, conversations with people in your corner, whether it be people like us or people that you get lessons from or whoever it might be. Those conversations can be, a little bit difficult, and it's okay. You're going to have difficult conversations as you get older, especially in this game, but you want to know where you're at. So you have the most information in front of you to be able to make an informed decision and an actionable plan for yourself. I think the other thing too is to make sure that the information that you are garnering from people, you want to make sure that it jives with, what it is that, you think. I guess the best way to put this is if you have coaches that are yeah, no, you can definitely play Division I baseball and be a dual guy at that level without a doubt. You might want to get that verified from a handful of other people, because it's hard to be a dual guy in college at any level. So to just kind of flippantly say that you can be a dual guy and, let's get that verified from some other people. is kind of what my point in that part of that discussion. But, I think being able to have those conversations with your coaches is going to, not only set you up for success as you get older, but also, it gives you an idea of where to start and how to then create an actionable recruiting plan that you can then move forward with to continue to be, an active participant in what it is that you're doing to be recruited.
Yeah, I think you hit on an important point there, which is it's one thing to be proactive, but you need to be targeted in your proactive outreach. Because if you're reaching out to Arkansas and you're not anywhere near good enough to play for Arkansas, like you can say you're being proactive because you're reaching out with coaches, but it's not going to be fruitful outreach. So that conversation that you're talking about, having those honest conversations, establishing a level of school or programs that you feel pretty comfortable that could be a fit for you from a talent perspective. Like that's where you should focus the most of your time. But you should also have schools on there that like, hey, if I go out and have a really good day and I play to my potential or I get a little bit better over the course of the next couple of months, like you should have those type of schools on your list too. Because if it does go well, you'd hate to look back and be like, well, I never reached out to them. But within that conversation, you got to have you got to get rid of your ego for a second, and you got to take some advice from some people who know what they're talking about to be able to point you in the sweet spot, and then also give you some targets that may be a little bit of a reach. Because me and you, we can speak to it on a bunch of different levels, but kids make big jumps in really short periods of time, and sometimes all it takes is one really good weekend to really showcase what you're capable of, and you can get some interest from some schools that you may not have thought were within reach a couple months ago. And it'd be remiss to not reach out to those types of schools. But being smart about who you target in terms of the schools that you're looking at, like that comes from information, that comes from honest conversation, and it's going to give you a better chance to be successful. And if you do that and you take ownership of it, and you're willing to send those emails, and you're willing to make those posts on social media, and you're willing to follow the right coaching staff, and you don't sit back and wait for it to come to you, now you've stacked the chips in your favor much more than the kid who just shows up to a tournament and hopes coaches show up. We've all recruited guys that we had no idea who they were. We show up to a field and like, ooh, that kid's really good. But let's be honest, the vast majority of kids you recruit because at some point they either reached out to you or somebody told you about that kid. And that's where the source of most recruiting happens. So stack the chips in your favor the best you can, and make sure that you're doing everything that you can to put yourself in an advantageous position when it comes to the recruiting process, because it's hard enough as it is. We've talked about it before, but a really small percentage of kids get a chance to play college baseball. And if you're going to crack into that 8 or 10% that end up playing at some level, you got to make sure you're doing at least more than the 90% who aren't.
Yeah, I had the rookie of the year at RPI in 2019. I took a flyer on the kid because I got a call from somebody that I really, really trust. And I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And I went and saw him play, liked the swing, thought it was good. And then he came in and was rookie of the year. So, I don't necessarily know if I would have really gone down the road had I just stumbled upon him. But, being able to get a phone call from somebody that you trust, and this is just one specific example. I could, go into a lot of them, but, I got a phone call, saw the kid play, wham, committed, rookie of the year, had a phenomenal career. So, to your point, get with somebody who can help you do that stuff and open some doors for you.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else you want to add, Coach?
No.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. Go out there and take ownership of your process and give yourself the best chance possible to play college baseball. Talk to you next week. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.